Episode 2. Here we are, back to Jibreel Talks Comics. For you guys who have never seen this show before, I'm Jibreel, and this is my show where I talk about comics. Basically, do a quick intro. We go over my pull list this week, everything I got, little haul at the comic shop. We go over any stories, if there are any for that week. Go over what else I've read that week. Do a pick of the week, and then we finish up with some reading recs for next week. So, simple show. We keep it quick, light, under an hour, no big deal. Episode 2 here. Now, this is the interesting thing. I was debating whether to even number these episodes because there's no continuity across episodes, you know what I mean? And again, I'm just a little inside baseball here for you to understand the show. Some shows just put a date on it, you know? Today, I'm recording right now, it's July 28th. And so I'm like, does it make more sense for me to just put like Jibreel Talks Comics week of, boom, whatever date, rather than a number? Because again, people see episode 2, they're like, oh, do I have to watch episode 1? And now some people would be like, hey, go check out the back episodes, which I recommend. I love views. I'll take the views. But at the same time here, it doesn't always make sense when it's a weekly poll list, unless you're doing evergreen content that lasts forever, that whether you watch it a week from now or a year from now, it's applicable. It's not one of those shows. Do you really want to see my poll list in 2021 or something like that? You know, years from now? I wouldn't. Probably not. So I'm debating. Maybe we'll see a difference in the naming convention of the episode. But for right now, we're episode 2. Now, before we get into business, I did want to send a huge thank you to everybody who did watch episode 1. Again, not like I was expecting a ton of views or anything like that, but for the fact that anybody watched, I think was like really exciting for me. You know, the fact that this is kind of uncharted territory. I don't have a background in comic book shows or anything like that. I do currently have a video game podcast with a friend of mine, and I do have a background on YouTube doing like music content years ago, but comics are kind of like uncharted territory for me. So the fact that like anyone watched, period, I don't have this established base on TikTok or anything like that, is actually really exciting. Got a couple subs out of it too. So I'm gonna keep going. We're gonna see where this goes, and I'm pretty excited for it. So let's just get into it. First one's not a comic, but hey, it's my show. I'll do what I want. We have a new Junji Ito collection, Soichi. Now, for y'all who don't know, I'm a huge Junji Ito fan. You see, right along here, I got everything he's released in English so far of like the Viz Media era. So we're talking Uzumaki and onwards, like 2013. I mean, I got the guy's work tatted all over my arm and stuff like that. So I'm a huge fan of the guy's work. And we got a new collection around the character Soichi. I'm very early in it. I'm only, I think, 1 or 2 chapters in. So I can't speak as to like the collection itself. But I've read a lot of stuff online over the years and stuff like that before it was formally translated. And so a lot of this material I've read before, but I'm really excited to have it physically. So Soichi, let me get this out of the way because I'm not going to reference it again. So let's get into my poll list, all right? We're going to start with, let's start with Marvel. That's what I'll do. I'll do like Marvel, DC, and then maybe next week I'll do like DC, Marvel. We'll keep it dynamic, all right? So let's get into it. First one, this beautiful Stormbreakers Lucas Wernick cover of the Hellfire Gala issue. Beautiful Dazzler image on there. So let's get into this. This is an insane book. So I'm going to probably have to take a little bit of time for this. So anyone who's not an X-Men fan, I apologize, but we need to talk about Fall of X. Like, this is a big event that has been built to for quite a while now. They've been kind of laying the seeds through like Immortal, X-Men Red, some of the one-offs that like before the Fall of X, Heralds of Apocalypse, Sinister Four, or whatever. They've had a whole bunch of spin-offs that are kind of building towards this massive event, and there's been this debate as to what Fall of X even really means. Some people are like, oh, it's the fall of Krakoa. It's the end of the Krakoan era. Anybody who's been paying attention to the writing on the wall and the solicits for future issues know that the Krakoan era is going to keep going. But there's a lot of questions. What does fall mean? Fall of Krakoa? Some people are like, oh no, this is the fall of Charles Xavier. Now, anybody who's actually read the Hellfire issue, huge spoilers here. This is the fall of more than just Charles. Things really hit the fan, and we knew that Orcus was going to attack at some point. The manner in which they did it was a little unpredictable because they had a lot of different threads. You have the little Dr. Stasis and MODOK little thing that they're doing with infecting the medications. Nimrod and Omega Sentinel and Moira, they're more, I think, confrontational in terms of the physical. There's obviously the portion in which they're kind of changing public sentiment that's kind of coming out of Judgment Day. So there was a lot of different threads. Obviously, you have background players like Mother Righteous, and she's kind of loosely connected to what Orcus is doing now. So the question was, like, how are they going to do it? And basically, they kind of hit on all fronts all at once. You know, there was a physical attack on the Hellfire Gala in which there was like a mass casualty event. Dr. Stasis kind of played his hand where they basically had to leave Earth, and the moment they don't, they are going to kill a lot more humans. And so it kind of forces Charles's hands to kind of make people vacate Earth. And so basically what a lot of people were predicting, that maybe the mutants would be leaving Earth and then it kind of lead into a kind of a splintered mutant base. That seems like the era that we're entering into here. Very like Dark Reign-ish type situation. A lot more dire straits for the mutants because, again, we've had 2019 to now pretty thriving kind of mutant kingdom stuff. So the fact that eventually it would kind of come to an end, this is kind of unsurprising. So they go through the gates. I don't want to get into too crazy spoiler territory because, again, I think this issue is definitely worth reading. But I would say that this definitely sets up things to make a lot more sense with some of the solicited books that we got in, like Uncanny Spider-Man, Astonishing Iceman. It's like, okay, what are we doing here? Why is Nightcrawler Spider-Man, for example? This explains it a lot because every mutant that can resist Charles's forced kind of like telepathic move on, get off of Earth, is basically staying on Earth, which leads kind of like a ragtag group of the strongest mutants, a lot of the Omegas and stuff like that, staying on Earth. So this book sets a lot of that up, but must read material for any X-Men fan, and I'm really excited to have this beautiful Dazzler cover. It's a real shame that you get Dazzler on the X-Men and then things go really bad for the X-Men right after, so I'm hoping that Jerry Duggan is going to keep, writing X-Men. That's not going anywhere. I want to see her on the team. I love Dazzler. Next one, Ultimate Invasion. Jonathan Hickman. This is the second issue. For you guys who don't know, we're basically getting a slightly restored form of the Ultimate Universe. It's not the Ultimate Universe because the maker is making a lot of changes. It's not even the same Earth number or universe number. So things have changed dramatically. This is not where Miles is from, that Ultimate Universe with the Ultimates and Ultimate Spider-Man and all that stuff. This is a slightly modified one, and Hickman is just a master of world building and establishing and answering a lot of questions preemptively with his little one-page kind of spreads where he explains things. So you get to a better idea of where all the major players in the Ultimate Universe are really even at, which ones have been taken off the board. The only one I think that seems to be kind of unaccounted for at the moment is Captain America, or Ultimate Captain America. As of right now, the maker doesn't seem to know what happened there. But for the most part, everybody else, he's either gotten under control or eliminated in entirety. So this is a universe completely under the control of the maker, which is obviously horrifying in its own regard. And you get some really cool time-displaced heroes kind of coming to attack the maker. You got him working with Tony Stark's father, which is like just seeing Howard Stark in that role. It's just a very weird, very Hickman-esque approach to a new Ultimate Universe, and I'm super on board for it. The reason why I'm on board for it is I grew up on the Ultimate Universe, so I love Ultimate stuff. I like the idea that Marvel has a more accessible universe, even though launching a universe with Hickman is not necessarily the most accessible thing you could do, because he doesn't really write for accessibility. He writes for expansiveness and comprehensiveness. And bringing something new to the universe while simultaneously reaching into a whole bunch of threads that maybe have been forgotten over time. It's why X-Men works so well, why his run on New Avengers works so well, why his run on Fantastic Four works so well, or even his late Ultimate stuff. This is very much in that vein. So it's something new, but it's reaching towards a lot of familiar threads. And I'm just super on board with what it's doing, because I didn't really necessarily want them to restore what was done previously, because what was done previously, I feel like, did everything it needed to do. From what I think it started in around 2000 to 2015 when Secret Wars happened. The Ultimate Universe wasn't in a great place in 2015, so I think when people look back and want that restored Ultimate Universe, I think it's a little bit, not revisionist history per se, but they're definitely looking back during the Golden Age and kind of forgot where it ended up going in those latter years. Even though there was some really good material coming out of the Ultimate Universe, I feel like Ultimatum was kind of like that line where things weren't great after the time. There's some good stuff you got out of Spider-Man after that point. Obviously, Miles happened after that point. But overall, I would say I'm glad that they're going back into the Ultimate Universe, but doing something fresh. So definitely check this out. It's one of the best books coming out of Marvel right now, and I'm super excited to see what this builds into. We're getting, I think, what it's going to end up being a one-shot with the Ultimate Universe, also kind of headed up by Jonathan Hickman. And then from that point onwards, we don't know what's happening. So definitely check this one out. Next one from Marvel. ASM, what is this? 30. I got this really nice Black Cat cover, and I always go with the variants for the ASM books. Not because I don't like the main covers. The cover A's are fine, but I find that they have a really strong variant game for ASM. And so I had to go with this one. Not my favorite cover, but unfortunately, a lot of my favorite ASM variant covers are also incentive variants, and I can't buy incentives on a week. I mean, I could, but the expenses, I already spend more than I care to spend on a week-to-week basis on single issues. I don't want to break the bank too crazy on incentive variants. So it's like, whatever the best non-incentive variant is, I'll take it. And so this book, really solid, generally, I would say. Like, am I in love with what Zeb Wells is doing on Spider-Man overall? No, I feel like most people aren't. Am I as sour on it as a lot of people are? No, I wouldn't say that. It's somewhere in the middle there. It's one of those things where I think I have a lot of... I give him a lot of leeway and a lot of bail for that. Because of that Hellions run, I swear. Like, I know Zeb Wells is capable of some amazing stuff. I mean, going back to what, like 08, 09, he was writing some really solid stuff, even on Spider-Man. And so I know he's capable of like some really solid stuff. So I'm not going to crap on him. But eventually you hit a number where it's like, okay, you're like, okay, let him cook. Let him do his thing. Let's see where it goes. And then, I mean, we're 30 issues in at this point. Some arcs have been better than others, for sure. Obviously, that Kamala thing, which, thank God, I launched the show after that whole event. That was a little mishandled. I don't like the fact that the way that they killed her off, I think, was a little not great for the character, especially the fact that Marvel editorial hasn't really even had the respect enough for the character to give her that consistent ongoing. Now we're getting it through the mutant side, which is great in its own regard, because I love what the X Office is doing. So the fact that they can kind of take her into that world and give her a proper treatment, I'm happy with. It sucks that it's only 4 issues. Why doesn't Miss Marvel have an ongoing? I don't know. There's so many people who have ongoings. The fact that she can't get one is mind-blowing to me. But the fact that we're kind of past that, and now he's doing his own thing, and you get this kind of campy, goofy Doc Ock story. This really does feel like the story that I feel like Zeb Wells really wants to tell. I think he wants to do goofy, over-the-top, campy Spider-Man stories that are not really baked into some insane continuity or trying to make these controversial decisions. I don't think he necessarily wants to do that. Not that I'm saying anybody's forcing his hand per se, but you could feel a comfort with this. And I loved what he did with Tombstone at the beginning of his run, and the fact that we're kind of heading back into that territory with this marriage thing, I'm super on board with. So a fun issue, nothing super crazy. I think it kind of ties into that annual that happened. I think it was like the issue, it wasn't an annual, it was like the issue 900 kind of anniversary issue thingy, that it kind of set up the autonomous Dr. Octopus arms that are kind of sentient and have a will of their own. It's kind of playing with that idea, but it's a lot of fun. I don't think it's too bad. I see some people pretty sour on ASM right now. What If Dark, Spider-Gwen. So the only reason I got this, I'm not into the What If Dark thing, to be honest with you, but I do like Spider-Gwen quite a bit, and I was really curious about it. And did you guys see that Greg Land cover? Insane. So I had to get a variant on this one, and generally I like this variant quite a bit. The book was pretty cool. So it goes back to, spoilers to anyone who hasn't read ASM in the past, like, I don't know, 40 years or something like that. Spider-Gwen dies in there. Or Gwen Stacy dies in there. And so basically the idea is, what if Spider-Man died instead? Not a crazy, unique take necessarily. But then you basically get her taking up the Spider-Man mantle as Spider-Gwen, but it's not the same Spider-Gwen because she has no powers, basically. So, which is interesting, kind of coming straight off of the manga Spider-Man Red, who is also a Spider-Man without powers. We're getting a little bit of a resurgence of like, what if Spider-Man didn't have powers, and what would that look like? And you have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Obviously, there are things that Gwen Stacy does in here that your average person, it's an impossibility. You just don't have the upper body strength to hold webs and swing across and do the things she does in this. But I think it's a pretty fun book overall. I like the what if stuff sometimes. It's kind of hit or miss for me. But overall, I think this is worth checking out. If you're a Spider-Gwen fan, if you're looking for something fun to just have fun in the universe, you get some Norman Osborn in there, and it's back in an older era, I think it's worth checking out. Next one, the last Marvel book we have is Hallows Eve 5. Got this beautiful Hellfire Gala variant that I actually quite like, which is kind of funny because she was not invited to the Hellfire Gala at all. It has nothing to do with it. They just gave her the little variant. I don't think she's the only book that got that variant. This is the last issue of this run. Overall, I think it was a pretty good run. Like, not mind-blowing or anything like that, but I think it ties up some loose ends that the Beyond era of ASM left. also, this is the last book that's kind of spinning out of dark web. So it's interesting to see some of those things tied up in some ways, but at the same time, it does feel like a remnant of a past era. It is weird to be, in July of 2023 at this point right now, and reading something so intrinsically tied into dark web. And the fact that it's a book that ties out of that, but Madeline Pryor and Chasm, or Ben Reilly, or whatever you want to call him, don't really play a role whatsoever until the very end there. So unfortunately, not even unfortunately, it is around her, around Janine and her adventures trying to collect these masks, and she's being hunted by the Beyond Corp. And that's basically everything. It's a 5-issue mini. I don't think it's a bad read at all. I think and she has a really cool design, and I think that's one of the I feel like the accusation that I feel like Punchline gets all the time, where it's like it's a character that was very much designed first and fill in the blanks later. Obviously, I feel like Hallows' Eve is definitely one of those characters. However, give it some time. I feel like she could really become something else. That power set, I still feel like, can be a little goofy at times, and I feel like a little disjointed, just kind of just endless power set depending on... She could be a mummy, she could be a witch, she could be a werewolf. Like, it's goofy. I feel like there's a way to do that. You get her around Halloween time and keep her in that horror world, I feel like there's an opportunity. But yeah, when she's kind of juxtaposed to a Spider-Man or a Beyond Corp or even that connection to Ben Reilly in that form, I think is jarring at times. But overall, I think it's a fun read. I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I collected it. And she's got 2 more books related to her coming out. From what I understand, she's going to take a very prominent role in the next ASM annual book, which I think might be next week as well. So this upcoming Wednesday. So she's going to be a major role in that. And so if you're not reading Hallows' Eve, you might be a little confused as to what's happened with Janine post Dark Web. And then also, from what I understand, she's going to get a one-shot at some point as well. So definitely, if you're curious to see where she even went after Dark Web, definitely want to read this series. But I don't think it's must-read material, especially if you just kind of stay in the Spider-Man world. I don't think you're going to miss anything there. All right, cool. Let's get into DC. We have 3 Night Terrors books, but let's just start with the main title. We have Night Terrors number 2. So Night Terrors is turning out to be a pretty fun event, in my opinion. I know I've seen a lot of disparate opinions. Some people love it. Some people... I don't know if anybody hates it. Some people are just off of it. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. I like the Deadman focus and them bringing in like Sandman and stuff like that. I think it's really fun. I love all the Golden Age references and stuff like that. The primary antagonist, I feel like at times is more intimidating than others, but I'm kind of curious to see where this all goes with this Dreamstone stuff. But overall, this kind of just continues some of the stories that were set up before. The thing to remember about Night Terrors, for you guys who aren't paying close attention to it, is these main number titled, this is the Night Terror story. All the rest, for the most part, is supplementary material. I think some of the spin-offs, some of them are more important than others. Zatanna, Wonder Woman, Batman, these are the ones that I feel like are really important to the main continuity of Night Terrors, but the numbered entries are where you get the meat and potatoes of the story. And Deadman, I just like a Deadman focused story. You don't really get too much from him outside of like Justice League Dark Direct stuff. So the fact that we're getting a full event where he's kind of the one moving things forward, I think is really dope. So not too much to report on this one, but I'm glad to have continued collecting this. I'm definitely going to see the event through. Joshua Williamson is doing his thing. The art in this is incredible too. Now this one, Night Terrors Detective Comics. I got this beautiful midnight cover here. Cardstock variant too, so I think $1 more expensive. But the build quality is always really solid on these cardstock variants. That is one thing I like from DC, is that their build quality on their single issues, if you fork out the extra buck, I think is totally worth it. And I like the more sturdy build on these single issues. And don't get me started on the Prestige format. We'll get into that. But this is probably one of my favorite... they're not spin-offs, they're tie-ins, yeah. One of my favorite tie-in Night Terror books so far. The art is incredible. I love the Gordon focus on it. And it just has this ambiance to it, this noir, dark ambiance, this really horror, body horror kind of theme to it. It translates that kind of dreamlike state of like what is happening in Gotham right now. And it's really cool because Gotham's already a crazy bugged out city. So the fact that kind of everybody falls asleep and nightmares become reality, and you have this like nightmare Batman running around and Gordon's after them and Gordon's body is like literally crumbling to pieces. It's just a bugged out book, and definitely do not sleep it. If there is one tie-in I think you should get, I might have to recommend this one. This one's really, really solid. And if you're not super enthused about this detective run by Ron V, you don't have to worry about that, because tone-wise, it's a very different type of run. What they're doing with the asthma and all those, the families, the organs and stuff like that for Detective Comics don't tie into this really whatsoever. This is a Commissioner Gordon story first and foremost. And so you don't have to worry about any of that continuity. So if you're reading, like, let's say Zdarsky's Batman only right now, you're not reading Detective, you won't get confused from this. But if you're also not reading, like, Zdarsky's Batman, you're only reading Detective, or you're reading both, or neither, or whatever, if you have a basic foundation in Batman, you should be able to understand this. And I think it's really dope because it gets into the Commissioner Gordon family dynamics as well, with Barbara and his son and stuff like that. So really, really dope book. I was super impressed by this one. And I just can't highlight that art enough. It's gorgeous. This next one, Night Terrors, Harley Quinn. Look at this Jenny Frison cover. I mean, look at this. It's gorgeous. I love it. I've been collecting the Jenny Frison variants for a number of issues now. It's been months. And those are the only variants I get. And I like them because they're not just incentive variants, so you don't have to, like, pay out the ass to get them. And then on top of that, they're just gorgeous. I think they're just... They work so well together once you have them all together. It's not like they're like connecting variants or anything like that, but she's just got the Harley style down. And especially in conjunction with, and this is not Night Terrors related necessarily, but in conjunction with the internal art of Sweeney Boo, who I love her art too, which is tough because I love her main cover A's too, but I can't double up. So I've stood with the Jenny Frison variants, and that's not probably going to change anytime soon. But I just love that combo, like Jenny Frison on the outside, Sweeney Boo on the inside. It's perfect. This run, or this tie-in, pretty solid. Again, doesn't tie in dramatically, I think, to what's going on, other than the fact that it's very multiverse focused, and that'll hit or miss for you. It's a very different type of tie-in. I'm kind of multiversed out personally. I'm kind of off of it, but I do like the fact that it references that kind of Grant Morrison multiverse stuff from the mid 2010s. That guide that kind of came out, and having her have fun in those worlds with the pirate stuff and generally like that. So it's a fun book, but it's definitely not a must read. But if you're reading and enjoying Tini Howard's run on Harley Quinn right now, I think this is a totally fine addition to that. It's not super tied into the continuity, so maybe if you jumped off during the last run, I forget who wrote the last one. Was it Stephanie Phillips? I'm probably off. Whoever wrote the last Harley Quinn run, if you enjoyed that run but you maybe fell off and didn't continue with Tini Howard, I don't think you'd miss anything so far that would keep you from understanding this one, so feel free to jump into that. Next one should be a quick one to talk about. It's Poison Ivy Uncovered. This is basically an art book. It's akin to what Lee Bermejo did, except not in prestige format with his covers. It has all the really nice variant covers from this Poison Ivy run. I think we're 12 issues in, 13 issues in, something like that. And it just has variants from there, and it has kind of a connecting narrative. It's, again, not a full story in this, but they have these pages periodically where she's kind of setting up the fact that you are infected with cordyceps and you're kind of hallucinating, and enjoy these pictures of me, basically. It's a lot of fun. I love this run. I love these variants. It's one of my favorite runs coming out of DC right now, and so I was super down for this. And I'm a little hit or miss with these art books because, again, you're just spending, like, how much was this? This was $6, all right? So $6 for just pictures can be a lot. Thankfully, it's for a run that I actually really love the variants. I have variant covers for almost every book for the Poison Ivy run. Not all from the same person, obviously. Lots of artists contributing to it overall. But this is a run that I like, and I was that's kind of the reason why I got it, and also why I was kind of skeptical about getting it, because I have so many variant covers. So I knew maybe half this book would be variant covers of books that I literally have. But at the same time, I was like, there's going to be books here that were like incentive variants or just beautiful pictures overall that I just missed because I wasn't ordering books when the run started. So I had some cover A's from the beginning there. And so I was like, you know what? Let me just get it. And I was happy with it. And I'm really glad to add this to my collection. And I think if you're in any way a fan of the run going on right now and you're a fan of the artistic direction that the run has taken, definitely look into this. But it's not like must-read material because there's nothing really to read in it. Second to last here, we have Batman Brave and the Bold #3. For you guys that don't know, this is a compilation series, but I will put a big notice out there. I know a lot of people are reading this one for what Tom King is doing right now. Tom King took a break on this book, so he is not in this book. Chris Cantwell and some of the other guys are still in this. Ed Brisson is still doing his thing on this one. But Tom King's story is picking back up on the 4th book, so if you're only in it for that, maybe skip this book. But overall, I got this book. Overall, I was kind of like on the fence about it because some of the stories I actually like quite a bit, but other ones I'm kind of like meh about. I'm not super into what Ed Brisson's doing. It's very Batman Inc. Ravager focused, which is cool in its own right, but it's not really what I'm into. Batman doesn't really even play much of a role in it. There's a Superman story. Again, I like Superman, but this specific Superman story just didn't really grab me. But the one at the story at the beginning and the story at the end were really interesting to me. So the first one is, I think, is like Mr. Baseball or something like that, and it's just a kind of a classic Batman story where he's hunting down this, he's kind of like a sleazeball dude that gets scarred up that starts hunting this mobster guy that he's like that he robbed previously. And so Batman's trying to intervene and save this mobster from this guy that I feel like in many rights has a full justification to kill this dude. But Batman, obviously, he's like, nobody dies on my watch, so he has to intervene. It's a pretty classic, fun Batman story I enjoyed. And then the last story is kind of like a Batman vampire story. Gorgeous art. I can't rave about the art enough. So if you're just looking for some new stuff to read, if you like compilation books, I think this one's definitely going to do it for you. But again, if you're only in it for Tom King and that kind of first meeting of the Joker stuff, then you might want to skip out on this one. But overall, I enjoyed the book. Or I enjoyed 50% of it at least, which is fine enough for me. The last one is one that I've been waiting for a minute. We have Superman, The Last Days of Lex Luthor, prestige format book by Mark Waid and Brian Hitch. Brian Hitch is on a little resurgence right now. I like him doing his stuff on Ultimate Invasion, and then we also have him on this book. I love the prestige format, the wide pages, and overall I think it lends itself as a format very well to what Brian Hitch is doing. His art looks immaculate in that bigger format. And I think it's a pretty compelling story. Simple premise. Lex Luthor is dying because he was screwing around with kryptonite in a way that he shouldn't. And he knows that Superman, because of his principles, can't just let him die. So Superman has to intervene and save Lex Luthor's life. But Lex Luthor even makes it more difficult on him by publicly broadcasting Superman confirming that he will save his life. And obviously, public sentiment about Lex Luthor is in the toilet. Everybody hates Lex Luthor. And so it puts Superman in a tricky spot again, which Lex Luthor is such an a-hole. Basically, he was like, I'm going to make you save me, but I'm also going to make it even more difficult for you because everybody hates me. And so now everybody's going to know that you saved me. So basically, I'm going to live, but I'm also going to put your rep in the toilet. It's a genius move by Lex Luthor, but it's such a mean move. But this book is so great because not only does it have that interplay with modern Superman and Lex, but it kind of goes into the past during those Smallville days and gives some really great insight into the psychology of a young Lex and that kind of resentment where that builds. And the fact that they had some crossing there and some dynamics before this kind of Superman versus Lex dynamic. There was the Clark and Lex thing, and the fact that Lex could simultaneously acknowledge that, hey, Clark is a smart guy. He should get out of here too. I don't know why you're not as frustrated with what I deem to be this kind of stupid backwater town as I am. And I resent the fact that me, a wise mind, has to be trapped in this town. I need to get out. And so it's so interesting to see two people, obviously very different backgrounds, one being a Kryptonian, one being a human, but the fact that they both are huge minds in kind of a smaller world and how they react to that completely different, and it really juxtaposes the character of Lex versus what Superman is. And I just think Mark Waid, he just gets it, and he's just on fire right now. Especially he's writing also World's Finest Teen Titans, World's Finest Batman and Superman, or Superman versus Batman, or whatever it's called. Yeah, he's just killing it. So shout out to Mark Waid. I'm super down for this run. And so let's do the pick of the week. If I have to recommend one, I'm actually going to pull it from my poll list here, and I'm going to go with Ultimate Invasion. If there's one book that I have to push you guys to pick up this week, it's going to be Ultimate Invasion. Jonathan Hickman is just, he don't miss, for me personally. Everything I've read by him, I just absolutely love, from his X-Men to New Avengers to Fantastic Four to Secret Invasion. Even his indie stuff is really, really solid as well. And so I have to recommend this book. It's totally worth the money, in my opinion, if you have any investment into the potential future of an Ultimate Universe. If you plan on jumping on to a universe that maybe has this clean beginning, middle, and maybe end at some point, definitely check this out. So that's my pick of the week. So let's get into some recommendations for next week. And then after that, we'll get into some of the stuff that I've also read this week. So for next week, we have Moon Knight 26. Jed MacKay, absolutely killing it. I've already kind of spoke his praises on the last episode, I believe. But he's killing it on this run. The art on it is just immaculate. So definitely continue reading Moon Knight. We have the Amazing Spider-Man Annual #1. It's going to be tying into Hallows Eve, so I highly recommend you check that out as well. We have X-Men #25. Aren't you guys also curious to see what this Fall of X thing does in terms of like these books that are continuing? So there are going to be books that kind of live in its own world. And that's what I'm thinking, like Wolverine and X-Force. Ben Percy is just doing his own thing. If anything, those are going to be tying into Ghost Rider going forward. But how is this going to have implications to the existing books? So there's going to be books that I would imagine are also going to be unfazed by it, like Deadpool. But then you have... Well, actually, no, Deadpool's ending soon, so we can cross that off. That's ending soon. But yeah, X-Men's going to continue going on. How is that going to be impacted by Fall of X? How will this team even exist going forward? You would imagine most of them are going to be resurrected to some capacity, because I know there are people who died that are going to be tied into teams with solicits already. So we know they're coming back to some degree. So I'm really curious to see kind of what goes on going forward. Jerry Duggan is kind of running this whole event, so I'm sure he'll like tie it into a bunch of other stuff that he's doing with Iron Man and stuff like that. Astonishing Iceman, curious to see Bobby get the solo treatment right now. It's been a while, I feel like, since I've read some really solid Bobby material, so I'm down to see what they do there. Scarlet Witch #7. I love it. I believe, what is Steve Orlando's writing this? I believe. Really fun series. I love. It just has this atmosphere of it, like her running her tea shop and helping people. It's very episodic. It's the comic debut of Darcy. I just love this run, love the art on it, and I'm super down to continue and seeing where it goes. And you get this really weird storyline where and anybody who's like paying close attention knows that the implications of this are a lot less than maybe they're trying to build up to. Magneto is back. Obviously, he's not, but there's some kind of clone or something like that. But I'm super down to see kind of the emotional implications of having her father come back. We have Strange Academy, Miles Morales #1. Don't sleep on this if you're a Strange Academy fan. This is the same team, and they're coming back with... I don't know what the story is for this, but I'm a Miles super fan. I loved Strange Academy, and I'm so glad that Humberto Ramos is staying on as the artist for this, and Scotty Young as well coming back. So yeah, definitely check this one. This is a must read for me. Peacemaker Tries Hard #4, another great Black Label series. I love everything that they're doing with Black Label over there in DC, and I wish Marvel had their answer to that, but unfortunately they don't right now. I love this series. It's so fun. It is tonally very similar to what they did with the HBO show, what James Gunn did over there. And so this is the good kind of synergy, I think. This is where they're taking a character that is not doing too much right now, and they're syncing it with a depiction on the bigger screen, but in ways that make sense. It's not a literal tie-in, but it's changes that make sense. I'm not against it. You know, they always crap on this whole idea of like MCU synergy, and I guess you could call this, DCEU synergy. And they crap on it, but I feel like it makes sense in some degree, especially if like what is so foundational to the original Peacemaker character that they're overriding per se, that is being lost with this kind of synergy. Nothing really. So I'm glad about this. 2 Night Terrors recommendations: Night Terrors Batman #2 and Night Terrors Joker #2. Very different books in their own right if they're continuing what they did previously. I love this kind of like entrepreneurial going into the office world Joker thing. It's hilarious. And Batman continues to have major implications to the event overall, and playing with just the psychology of Batman, while simultaneously acknowledging the fact that they've done these kind of psychoanalysis of like playing over his parents' death and all that. and the Robins and all that stuff. They've done that a million times. I mean, Batman's been around for how many decades now? So they've explored a lot of that, but they're finding new angles while simultaneously acknowledging the fact that they've done a lot of this before. And then lastly, we have a little indie title, Nocterra, number 16. Scott Snyder's book continues to be really good. I believe this is the end of an arc. You might have to do some background. This doesn't release, they has some of these larger breaks, especially because they do these kind of like one-shot books, so you might have to go back and refresh yourself on it. But Nocterra continues to be really good, and things are really coming to an head here. I don't want to get too much into spoilery for anybody who's not caught up on it, but definitely recommend that as well. So those are my reading recs for next week. Let's get into the last things that I read this week, because I read quite a bit of stuff that I didn't quite pull digitally. So let's get into The Invincible Iron Man number 8. This is something I recommend reading after you read Hellfire Gala for anybody who hasn't read it, because there are implications that kind of take place after Emma kind of leaves everything that's going on there, Emma Frost. So this kind of starts, I feel like, laying down the framework of pulling Iron Man farther into the X-Men camp, which I love, because they weren't doing too much with Iron Man before him. So having him in the X-Men world, as goofy as it sounds, I guess, like, what does Iron Man have to do with the X-Men? Well, once you understand the fact that, like, Fei Long is buying all the stuff and he's tied in with Orcus, the fact that you know that him and Emma Frost are going to have some kind of marriage things, which I'm sure is going to be more strategic than romantic. There might be some kind of romance thing. This is not going to be a permanent addition, but obviously they're working together right now to survive everything that's happening, because Tony is getting crapped on by Orcus pretty much just as much as the mutants are at this point. I mean, his Sentinels are being used as a primary extinction level threat to the mutants. And so that kind of implicates him, and it puts him in a tricky spot. And so I like what they're doing with Iron Man, and I like this Iron Man run overall. I like what Jerry Duggan's doing. Wolverine number 35. Wolverine's an interesting book at this point. It's obviously really tied into what they're doing with X-Force. The thing about Ben Percy, I like what he's doing. I just don't like the pace at which he does things. Things drag on and drag on. And so this is a book that I used to have pulls for that I actually dropped, because I'm like, man, this is just moving at a snail's pace. I think this is definitely a run to collect via trade more than single issues. I don't know how many trades we're in at this point, like 6 or 7 into the run at this point. But yeah, Wolverine continues to be a really solid book. I don't love the artistic directions that they go with on them, but overall, really like what they're doing. I like that they're going full comic book, over the top villain for Beast, while having Wolverine kind of be the counteracting force for that. But at the same time, this has major implications, because it's the formal, like, hey, I am leaving Krakoa, which is kind of a goofy decision considering the fact that, like, Krakoa as it was doesn't even exist anymore. So, it's like a breakup after they break up with you type of situation. We have Deadpool number 9, continues to be a really, really fun series. I think Alyssa Wong is writing it. Having a blast with this series. The only question I continue to have with Deadpool is, why is this a Krakoa era X-Men branded series? I have no clue. It has like no implications. It has a loose connection because yes, Deadpool is on X-Force, but X-Force has nothing to do with this book. So I don't know why this continues to be an X-Men branded book when you have, like, why is this X-Men branded but Scarlet Witch is not? If you know what I mean. That is the only question I have. But overall, I think the book continues to be hilarious, really fun, solid action. I love this kind of, I don't know how to exactly pronounce it, Atelier, like, assassin organization that they have with Lady Deathstrike and stuff like that. And Valentine, there's just such a cute romance that they have there. But yeah, really fun series, and I'm glad that it's continuing to go. We have She-Hulk number 15. I believe this is the end of this phase of Rainbow Rowell's run on She-Hulk, because from what I understand, it's going to be rebranded as Sensational She-Hulk. I think that's coming back in September, October, something around there. But this is not the end of their run, so that's very interesting to me. So it's essentially a new arc. It's a new run, but with the same team. So I don't know exactly how to describe that, but I found this run to be pretty fun. Is it like mind-blowing, must-read stuff? No, not necessarily, but I think there's some really fun looks into how Jen juggles the different parts of her life. How she remains to be a superhero. There's not a lot of superheroics in this. How she continues to be a functional lawyer. At the same time, how she functions to have what you would call a romance at this point. It's a weird relationship. You have some stuff where she maybe questions whether this relationship's even right for her. She meets somebody else who maybe they have a little chemistry together, and how she's going to approach that. I enjoy this run quite a bit. I think it's a fun, light read. It's not something... I don't think it's going to be many people's favorite She-Hulk run necessarily, but because it's missing, I think, a lot of the humor. Is my only critique of this run. Is I feel like it could be a little bit more funny, but I don't think they came into it to be this kind of campy, over the top. It's not Deadpool, you know what I mean? It's not this fourth wall breaking thing. It's a lot more straightforward of a run. I like that they're maybe doubling down on the romance aspect. I feel like they could go farther into it. If you're not going to do the humor thing, if you're not going to do the super heroics, and if you're not going to do the legal thing, make it a romance series, full through and through. And I think they're more in that direction than everything else. But I don't mind them going deeper. I feel like, if anything, it's just kind of lightly pattering into a lot of different things where I feel like, let's get crazier. So I'm hoping with Sensational She-Hulk, it has a more definite identity. We have the Avengers #3. Continuing Jed McKay's run. Loved what they've done so far with it. Jed McKay's just on fire right now. What I don't understand is how he's stretched so thin. He is writing several really, really great books. And I'm hoping that because he's on this larger book like Avengers, I believe he's also writing Doctor Strange right now, that the existing books like Moon Knight don't take super hard of a backseat. But because Moon Knight has been going for so long, I'm assuming that's going to be ending soon. So that's unfortunate, but he's just killed it on pretty much every book he's been on, and I'm super on board with it. And I like this team of the Avengers. It's a pretty classic team with Carol Danvers kind of leading it, and they're kind of just dealing with threats here and there. And I like the Kang pulled in thing, and that kind of ties it into the Timeless 2022 book that they had. So yeah, they're killing it on that run. Ghost Rider #16 continues to be a really fun book, and I love how they're bringing in Robbie Reyes and Danny Ketch as well. I'm not like a Ghost Rider super fan in the way that I know so much of the history, but for the most part, I've understand everything that they've done so far in this Ghost Rider run, and I'm liking what they're doing so far. No defined direction is my only saying. It's a little aimless at times, which is not necessarily a far departure from a lot of Benjamin Percy's books right now, but I like that it's going to be pulling into the X-Men world now a little bit. Again, they're not going full in like Iron Man per se, but I do like that they're going to have this cross with Wolverine right now. So I'm on board for that. One of my favorite books of the week that it was close to being my rec of the week was The Incredible Hulk #2. Such a good book. I love what they're doing for her. I love this horror theme of it, of the undead, and it's just a really fun direction to go with the Hulk, especially with the fact that we've gotten kind of this sci-fi horror, cosmic horror thing with Immortal Hulk. Then you got just a more traditional, I think, mecha sci-fi over-the-top campy thing with what Donny Cates did. Now we're going straight horror with Incredible Hulk, and I love how they're willing to genre bend so much with this character, and I think it's a perfect character to do so. So I love the kind of folk horror thing that they're doing with Incredible Hulk, and I'm super down with it, and I'm so excited to see where this run even goes. I don't want to get too far into it in terms of spoilers. Star Wars Darth Vader Black, White, and Red #4. Compilation series. It's a number of different creators. Continues to be a really great time. Perfect character for this format. I'm not reading a lot of Star Wars books, but I'm a huge fan of Star Wars, but some of these books are so far into the continuity that I don't necessarily know where to jump in quite yet. I'm going to jump into most of them. So I'm looking for an in for Star Wars, the main series. I'm looking for an in for Dr. Aphra. I'm going to be jumping into Dark Droids. I'm trying to get more into Star Wars comics right now. The only ones that I read consistently are the kind of Star Wars Republic one-offs, the one-shots that they do, and the Yoda series, which is coming to an end, I think, at issue 10 anyways. This one right here is a book that I feel like anybody can jump into. You could jump into this one probably and not worry too much about the previous ones, even though there's it's up to part 4 for some of these runs. But overall, definitely a good read if you're into the character of Darth Vader, if you're into Star Wars and you're not super into long continuity and long stretching storylines. These kind of compilation books are perfect for you. Next one I read, Silk #3. I like this run of Silk. It's very different from what they've done previously. It's not quite a multiverse book, but it has the tone of one. So it's her kind of playing around on this kind of pirate ship type of thing, but it's actually a dream sequence, so but not quite night terrors, so they're not quite doing that. But I think it's a pretty fun book overall. If you've read Silk previously, if you like the spider totem stuff that kind of tie into that of like why she would even have significance on a larger scale, why would anybody even mess with Silk in this way? But at the same time, you're kind of like traditional Spider-Man out. Like, you don't need another web slinger going around New York solving crimes. You want something way different, because I feel like, yeah, ASM, Adjectiveless Spider-Man, and Miles Morales fully fill that category. And then you have multiverse stuff like the Spider-Man India book that's happening right now, which also dropped this week. If you want something completely different than all of those, I feel like Silk #3 is going to do it for you. 2 Night Terrors books that I also read was Night Terrors Titans #1 and Night Terrors Action Comics #1. So let's get into Titans #1. It reminded me a lot of this old Teen Titans, and let me know in the comment section below if you remember what I'm talking about. There's an old Teen Titans episode where Raven is alone and there's some monster around Titans tower, and she has to find the other Titans and work through her own fears. And this book reminded me quite a bit of that. It's a different book and different characters. Again, it's the Titans, not the Teen Titans. But it reminded me a lot of them kind of going through Titans Towers and getting characters one by one as they're kind of caught in a loop of horror. And I like horror Titans. I like that dynamic. So this was a fun book. Not like mind-blowing, so important to read, but really fun, I think, in its own regard. We have Night Terrors Action Comics #1, continuing what was set up with Power Girl. I love Power Girl stuff, so this one was a no-brainer for me. I had a blast with this one. But again, that's what happens when you have this many tie-ins. You're going to have to take a piecemeal approach to it. Like, some things you're going to be into, some things you're probably not. I'm reading everything Night Terrors, but because these are not all like my jam, I'm not going to love every single tie-in. So I think Action Comics was fun, but it's like not my like bread and butter per se. Last 2 are 2 indie books, actually. I just read World Tree #4. James Tynion in the 4th. If you read any of his previous stuff, especially like Department of Truth and stuff like that, it's very much akin to that. And we're finally getting some like serious answers, some stuff answered of like the significance of certain characters that have been moving around. What's going on? What is this phenomena? What is it actually doing to the people that it's affecting? How are they going to even approach to fix this? We're starting to move to some answers, but it's one of those books that I feel like it's going to take a bit for me to fully invest until I know what the hell is going on. It's not an immediately like some of his books like previously, like Department of Truth, snapped immediately. Issue 1, I was like, oh yeah, I'm on board for this. This one's a little bit slower of a burn, but as somebody who I think lurked on the internet back in the day, in my younger days, you know, early high school, late middle school, all in these really crazy forums, seeing crazy stuff, I feel like this book really resonates with me. Like, if you've ever been on the internet and the crazy side of the internet, seeing the dark and dirty stuff, and you like that world, playing around with that, especially like early 2000s, early 2010s, I think this book is going to do it for you. We have Indigo Children #5. This book also continues to be really, really solid. I don't know how long this book is going to go. I feel like it might wrap up kind of soon, but maybe I'm super off base with that one. Continues to be really, really solid, though. I love how cinematic it is and how the paneling kind of leads you through these kind of chase sequences that make it feel just like an HBO show or something like that. So they're absolutely killing it on Indigo Children. It's akin to the previous issues. The team's all together now, and so now they're trying to head back to Cairo, and we'll kind of see what the implications are for that. And the other government agency continues to be chasing them. So there's not too much beyond that at this point. They've kind of coalesced around that primary person at this point. I don't know a lot of the names, so forgive me for not remembering all that. But yeah, so that's everything I've read this week. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, no stories this week, so it's pretty book heavy week this episode, but I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I can't wait to continue this show and kind of work out the kinks and figuring out exactly what I want to do with it. And I'm hoping over time, with just kind of diversity of content, we can play around with doing different things on this channel, because I don't want this channel to just be this show. This show, I do plan on being the central pillar of things. Like, this is going to be the bread and butter. This is the thing I want to do weekly, or at the very least bi-weekly, no matter what, continuing on this. So long as people watching, I want to continue the show. But at the same time, I want to have other bits of content on this channel. And I have lots of ideas. If you have ideas of things that you think would be fun, let me know. I want to do more detailed book reviews, like a formal run. I have so many trades behind me. If you probably can't see all of them, but I have all of Ultimate Spider-Man and Junji Ito and a whole bunch of DC stuff down here. I have Berserk. I do manga. I do comics. There's a lot of stuff I would probably love to talk about. And I would love to do like artist spotlights and different stuff like that. So if any of that stuff interests you, let me know down below. I'd love to know what you think. If you enjoyed the show, like, subscribe. There's going to be a weekly show, so we're going to have more episodes to come. And let me know what you pulled as well. I'm really curious about your pull list and what your pick of the week is. So till next time, this is Jibreel Talks Comics. See you guys.